Right, good afternoon, Professor. This is a very odd scenario, but I guess we'll just do our best with this awful pandemic going around. But anyway, welcome to our Ford case about a company that's kind of transferring from being a world-renowned automotive company to a more mobility service company. And I'll be covering kind of the introduction, their background, along with their kind of key acquisitions, which has helped them kind of stay up to date with all these technology advancements. So starting with a brief history of Ford Motor Company, of course, they were founded in 1903 by Henry Ford himself with 12 investors and 1,000 shares. And they kind of spent their shares very quickly, I think $28,000 to establish their first Model A car. But they turned a profit that same year, October, by about $37,000. So initially they saw the benefits and they saw the potential growth of this amazing company. In 1908, the Ford introduces the Model T, one of the most famous cars of the history of the automotive industry. It's just down here on the bottom right corner of your screen. You might recognize it yourself. 1913, they made their first massive automotive assembly line in the world, the first one in the world, so they became already the leaders in the industry. 1956, Ford stock went on sale for the first time, and it represents 22% of the company. Like you see in my presentation, 10.2 million shares were sold in the first day. 1987, beginning the acquisitions of other brands. They're already starting to see the importance of acquiring other companies, diversifying their portfolio of products, and kind of getting that insurance of growth and success, the inevitable success they are looking for. And then 1988, of course, they became the most successful auto company of all time. And then shortly after, in 1989, they acquired Jaguar Cars. And 1987 also, I should mention, they acquired Aston Martin. So just a few key stats that I kind of looked at through MarketLine along with their financial portfolio. Number of employees is 199,000 approximately. I think that topples just over 200,000 now. So they're continuously growing with more positions opening up in the autonomy world. With the self-driving cars, they're looking for more positions in that field. So this number keeps growing, which is a good thing. Their market cap is $20,068.89 million. The headquarters, of course, are in the United States, Michigan. Their company subtype is a public parent, and their revenue is 155,900 million, which sounds great, and it is great, but they have been declining, which I'll show you in the next slide. And their profit margin is 0.03% for 2020. And again, that sounds dire, but it used to be pretty good. Right, so as you can see here, after years and years of extensive growth, their revenue dropped by 2.7% from 2019, and their net profit margin dropped by almost 98.69% in 2019 also, which is a huge decrease. And the CEO, Jim Hackett, said at the time that it was kind of due to their failure to launch the Explorer SUV, which cost them about 47 million alone. And that was kind of the whole year was based around this product. It was an absolute failure, I believe, in the design and manufacturing of the goods, which caused this massive downfall in net profit margin. Also, they're investing to kind of more fields such as the autonomy, self-driving cars. I'll speak about later also. So overall, not a great year for Ford, but they're still in a very strong position. So in terms of product, services, and brands, they kind of fall into 4 operating segments, as you can see here: the automotive, financial services, Century Treasury operations, and Ford Smart Mobility LLC. So in regards to the automotive, that's just kind of completely focused on saying that they're famous goods, they're famous automotive cars, and gaining as much revenue as possible, and kind of anticipating consumer needs, kind of staying up to date with trends, up and coming trends. And kind of being the leading firm in their market. Ford's financial services, via Ford Motor Credit, is more concerned with the financing and leasing of the automotive products. And then whereas the Century Treasury operations is kind of more engaged in the essential investment and risk management decisions that are needed to fund and invest to the automotive focus. And lastly, the Ford Smart Mobility LLC is kind of a new subsidiary, which is kind of being forced, to be honest, because of this digital disruption, where it's becoming a matter of survival to start investing in self-driving cars and investing in exciting new initiatives to test new services. So that's something they had to do, and it's something to stay ahead of fierce competition. So the next slide is I kind of conducted as well during my introduction is a very brief SWOT analysis, just to kind of get a good strategic view on the company itself, see where they're going, see where their potential opportunities are, threats, and as long as with their strengths and weaknesses internally. So in terms of their strengths, like you can see here, they have a very robust portfolio. Of course, they have a very strong market share. Despite their drop in net profit margins, they're still very much a leader in the industry, which is great, and they're still kind of seen as the leaders in the industry from the consumer side of things. And they also have significant R&D capabilities. R&D, so I'm supposed to say, this is R&D. R&D capabilities, which means they're kind of investing a lot of time into, like I said before, developing new exciting initiatives to kind of get ahead of competition and to develop cars for the next generation, if it were. And they kind of direct themselves to improving safety, efficiency, consumer satisfaction across all their new products and services. That's their main focus. In terms of their weaknesses, unfortunately, they had a recent product recall, which could impact their very high reputation. Like I said, the SUV I mentioned before had several faults in North America, which included 1.2 million SUVs discovering a concerning defect that put drivers at risk of crashing. So of course they had to be ordered back. And although they dealt with it very well on the consumer side, customer relationship kind of thing, it was a huge effect on their brand image due to the faulty manufacturing design. In regards to opportunity, which is kind of what I'm focusing most on this presentation, is their strategic initiatives are very strong. They've made several partnerships over the recent years with Argo AI, SAPES, and Quantum Signal, along with Postmates and Walmart, which I'll discuss later, to kind of broaden their strategic plan and to kind of invest more in areas to transfer into more of a mobility business, as long as they're kind of solid foundation of their automotive goods. So I think they collaborated with Quantum Signal that same month in 2016, along with SAPES, which is completely interested in investing in automotive autonomous vehicles, which I'll get into later. It's not quite ready yet, but they're on the breaking point, and they want to be first to market and get that kind of first mover advantage. But of course, the threats across the whole industry, it's very fierce. It's got very intense competition. There's always fluctuations in foreign currencies. Being such a multinational company, MNC, a slight drop in currency rates will be a detrimental effect to their revenues. So they need to be aware of that, along with cross-cultural differences. And of course, there's strict government regulations also, which kind of must be respected and are always being confronted with, so that it must be taken seriously. Moving on. So Ford's acquisitions. So this is from IBM Center for Applied Insight 2018. They kind of said, this is back in 2018, so this is already 2 years ago, pretty dated. They said for more than 100 years, the automotive industry has created competitive advantage mainly through engineering excellence, meaning people created their USPs directly through making their cars better, making them design better, engineered better, all that good stuff. Going forward, this will no longer be sufficient. So back then, people already realized that companies such as Ford, GM, Fiat Chrysler, they have to be more than an automotive industry. They have to move towards, whether it be mobility, whether it be service, whether it be design, whatever. They have to try and get their competitive edge in another direction. So therefore, the importance of investing into R&D, which they're doing, will be quintessential and imperative to maintain their high levels of performance. So here we are here. Back in 2016, Ford propelled their digital transformation efforts by acquiring SAPES, which is an Israeli subsidiary, which is very dedicated to creating self-driving cars, as you can see up here in the top right of your screen. They kind of were more concerned about creating machine learning algorithms with computer vision technology focused on processing and classifying input signals that are fundamental for self-driving vehicles. So by teaming up with Ford, obviously Ford have a huge backing, have a huge supply of capital. So team up with them, that means they can retest their exciting new initiatives. And it means they can also attain their aggressive goals set out by Ken Washington, the Ford's Chief Technology Officer, to diversify into new markets and cement their long-term performance. So they're kind of more concerned in the car's virtual drive system captured by their existing car sensors. That same month, they also acquired a company called Quantum Signal to demonstrate another example on how they're trying to revolutionize their brand and shift towards this kind of more mobility image instead of an automotive image. Whereas SAPES before, the Israeli subsidiary, were more concerned about the actual development of artificial intelligence, QS is more kind of renowned, as you can see up here on the top right of your screen also, they're more renowned for creating kind of a simulation. They previously simulation environments. They're previously used in the military, robotic programs to explore unmanned automating systems, and so therefore it can be extremely effective with Ford to kind of see how it would be in a real life scenario. So they're kind of more concerned about that. They're also very experienced across sensing and perception robots, enabling Ford's vehicles to have the ability to interpret and analyze the environment around them. So whereas SAPES are concerned with developing the actual AI itself to make sure self-driving cars are a possibility in the near future, Quantum Signal is more concerned with testing this advanced technology in a real-life scenario using simulation environment technology. So the combination of both acquisitions will be really crucial to the long-term success of getting ahead of their competitors and being that frontline leading company in their industry that they're renowned for. Yes. So also, both acquisitions were great examples of their kind of transition into mobility. They also teamed up with Postmates and Walmart, which I thought was really interesting. As you can see, bottom left and bottom right, to deliver food service, whether it be grocery shopping or whether it be takeout meals. That's another area they are wishing to kind of transfer into. So it's not only self-driving cars alone, they want to do these little weird robotics to start delivering food, which I thought was awesome. Because I think company executives have estimated that mobility services alone could provide up to 20% returns compared to 8% returns just on automotive industry. So the potential there is a lot higher, and it's clearly obvious why the company itself is moving towards moving in that direction. Also, the investments that come across from automotive industry, we're talking about the manufacturing costs, the labor, the manual labor, I should say, the human capital, is extremely high. It's up to 30% higher than creating automotive. So although the startup costs for creating robotics and stuff is very high, maintaining it and kind of maintaining it, it was very, very much cheaper. So in the long run, it's been a much more efficient project for them. So they're really getting themselves ingrained in the Silicon Valley, employing lots of workers over there to kind of invest a lot of time into this to not only advance in their mobility services, but also this logistics opportunity presented by Walmart and Postmates. But in reality, and concluding my presentation, we are still a long way away from this automotive autonomous self-driving vehicle. It sounds really cool. They're actually testing the Postmates and Walmart logistics opportunity down in Miami Beach, funny enough. So we are close. They are testing it on roads, but it's still quite far away. Realistically, Volkswagen are using AI for their sales and marketing, combining machine learning tools with economic, political, and meteorological data gathered to forecast sales across the globe, across their 250 products. So they're using it for sales and marketing. GM are using it for prototyping. They've been utilizing artificial intelligence when developing new products and design for new features of their vehicles. Audi are using it for quality control. The AI picks up certain cracks in the windscreen which is unseeable for a human eye. So therefore, they're using it to kind of improve quality, improve safety, and improve efficiency. And Continental finally are using AI and all this technology to collect virtual vehicle test data to prove overall efficiency of their tires itself. So although it's very exciting, we're still quite a long way away.
Hello everyone, my name is Ziad Al Shantiri and I'm part of the group that chose Ford, no longer just an auto company, as our case. Um, in this case, we will be discussing how Ford evolved and um, stopped being only doing car manufacturing. They went into several other businesses like credit loans, to giving loans, auto loans, like real estate, like mobility, and then several other joint ventures, international in Thailand, China, India, Germany, and in other countries. Um, my colleagues will be talking about that part. I will be talking more about the part where um, we talk about the culture at Ford and how the culture Ford needed a culture change in order to survive the changing environment and the changing atmosphere of the car industry. Um, First, I'm going to start by saying that nothing can create failure quite like success. And Ford is a great example of how an iconic and a world leader in car manufacturing went from being top of the world to almost filing for bankruptcy, for Chapter 11 bankruptcy around 2006, and it needed the US government to bail it out with the two other big companies in Michigan and Detroit, um, to bail them out in order to make it for the next um, 10, 15 years. Um, so in 2006, everybody knows that Ford almost filed for bankruptcy. Again, the U.S. government had to put a lot of money to bail them out, and since then they had three changes in CEOs. The first CEO that took over from 2006 until 2014, his name was Alan Mulally. The second CEO was from 2014 until 2017 was Mark Fields, and the current CEO, which is the face of the company and the person that we will be discussing that has a lot to do with all the changes that are happening at Ford and um, all the good things that are happening at Ford's. His name is Jim Hackett, and he's currently the president and the CEO of Ford. Um, he started in 2017. He comes from a completely different background. He comes from the furniture background. He was CEO of a furniture company, and he graduated from University of Michigan, so he's a local guy. He has a lot of roots in Michigan, and he was chosen to lead Ford as their CEO since 2017. Um, from what I understand and what I did some research about him, he's known for his different approach that keeps pushing and challenging all the employees at Ford, and is already turning heads in the I keep saying hotel because I work in hotel in the auto industry. In his last message to all Ford employees, he mentioned that even though Ford made $4.4 billion, their net operating income, um, he mentioned that this is a mediocre result, and he expects this to be doubled on in 2019, which was the next year. Um, like I said, currently he's the CEO, and William Clay Ford Jr. is the president of the company. Um, I did add a snapshot from for 2019 that was sent on their K10 report, yearly report. Um, and in the metrics, if you look at the metrics, it explains a lot of how Jim Hackett operates. Um, all they mentioned a lot of good stuff, but you can see of how he's looking always to create value for stakeholders. The whole snapshot emphasized on how they're expecting um, growth in cash flow, return on investment, um, earning before income and tax, and earning before income and tax margin. So all he talks about is how he's he's looking to make Ford the world's most trusted company, how he's looking to make Ford one of the most profitable company for its stakeholders, and how he's looking to turn things around and keeps pushing the envelope. Um, I went also to Ford's website and I found what they call their truth, our truth. And it talks basically on the culture at Ford. And I actually put all those into slides and I explained a little bit of what they talk about when they say their truth is their truth. And I'm going to start with the first one. Um, the first one is one Ford. And it talks about, and I'm going to read it for you and I'll explain a little bit. It talks about how they rely on each other, on respect and care for each other. I'm going to read it as if I'm one of their employees. We build networks and partners without boundaries. We welcome everyone's unique contributions, communicate candidly, and work together as one team. We are family, which explains the multiple joint ventures abroad. Like I mentioned, there was one in China with Shanghai Ford Automobile Company, one in Thailand and all Southeast Asia with Auto Alliance, and one based in Germany, but it covers England, India, and France with Getrag Ford Transmission GmbH. Um, Also, which explains uh, the loyalty and the high rate of retainage for all the employees. Um, Many times you meet someone, an older gentleman, or someone that you meet that they tell you that they retired from Ford and they worked all their life in Michigan. Especially us here in Florida, I lived in Naples and Tampa, and there's a lot of retirees in both communities. And I've met a lot of people that worked for the auto industry, and especially for Ford, and they always talk about the good benefits and the good pension that they have and how they worked really hard when they were young and how they are able to actually retire comfortably. The second note I'm going to talk about is how they put people first. And it talks here about how, I'm going to read it again. We are a company driven by purpose, whether it's our customers, employees, partners, or communities. We obsessed about the wants and needs of people to drive human progress, which explain again the loyalty and the feeling of pride that every former or current employees of Ford always shows. Um, Again, Ford's benefits are top notch, uh, and this is what allows them to keep people there, and this is a small example of how they put people first. The third one I'm gonna talk about is do the right thing. We begin with the belief that trust in our brand and each other comes from acting with integrity and transparency. We foster safe, inclusive work environment that create freedom to be our whole self and do our best work. And from the articles I read, Ford became this company that always in meetings they used to do meetings that they make it fun. They listen to everyone, they listen to new ideas, they're always open to new ideas. How can they better themselves and how can they push the envelope to stay or to become and stay and try to compete with all the technology, all the electrical cars, all the new technology that's coming um, in the car industry. Again, speaking about culture, the fourth one is be curious. We approach the world and each other with a sense of interest and wonder. We are humble enough to know we can learn from every situation and actively question to understand and think critically. This helps with understanding what their customer want and not become complacent once they reach the top like they've done before. Again, it's listening to your customers is very important, seeing what the customer wants. Um, it's understandable that the truck, the F-150, is one of their best sellers. But again, if there's a big market share in the electrical car, you have to listen to your customers. You have to see how you can compete with the other companies, and you have to start producing those cars. You have to start producing maybe more sedans, not only focus on the cars that are the best sellers in your company. The fifth point I'm going to talk about is about create tomorrow. Um, We cultivate meaningful change to optimize today and create tomorrow. We look ahead in our focal length and bring clarity to the future. We solve problems creatively, accept risk, and experiment boldly, which explain the focus on the electrical cars again, even though their bestseller is the F-150 truck, and the continued investment in the mobility section, which focuses on connected services and autonomous vehicles business. Um, Again, if they're gonna stop at the F-150, if they're gonna get back to 2008 again. I read an article in the last couple of days that now they're also producing and helping with the coronavirus crisis. They're producing some masks, they're producing respirators, not masks, I do apologize. And this shows you that they're always listening to what's going on, and this shows you that they're very involved in their environment and what's going on in life. Um, this number six is we play to win. We are accountable. We are in business to create value, and we celebrate when we do. We are focused on our competitive fitness, efficiency, and agility. We make quality decisions and are each empowered to deliver excellence. Probably explains the approach and the aggressiveness of this current CEO, Jim Hackett. He's never satisfied and he demands results from all stakeholders. He is not okay with being mediocre. He's always pushing the envelope. Um, he's always trying to be the best. And then, last but not least, um, play to win. We are accountable. We are in business to create. We already spoke about that. I do apologize. Uh, the last one that we're going to talk about is built for tough. We accept challenges and overcome them with confidence, courage, and optimism. We put the world on wheels, embracing disruption to evolve. We are resilient and in it for the long haul. Um, Probably the most recognizable slogan for Ford. We all know when we hear built for tough. Um, and it speaks volume about how many times the company faced challenges, especially again around 2008, and it overcame all these challenges and in a stronger way. They became better, and they always overcame all these challenges. Um, I hope I was a good help, and I explained a little bit about the culture at Ford. And basically that's what I have for now. I'll leave it to my colleagues to keep going with this project. Thank you and have a great evening. Bye bye.
What's up, everybody? My name is Brandon Kroc. I'm in a group with Oliver Graves and Ziad El Shantari. I think that's how you say it. Our group presentation is on the case that is Ford no longer just an auto company. The part that I will be doing is the conclusions and the recommendations section. I also got my handy dandy towel here because I know that I'm going to sweat even though we're not presenting in front of a group. But to start, so right here is the conclusion page, and basically look right here on this top section, and just let you know that Ford was obviously founded in 1903 by Mr. Henry Ford. They're one of the three largest auto manufacturers around the world, and they're globally recognized in that automotive industry. During Oliver's internal analysis, he looked at their strengths, he looked at their weaknesses, he looked at their opportunities, and he looked at their threats. This is also known as the SWOT analysis. Their strengths include they have an immense research and development team, R&D team. They're focused strictly on safety, efficiency, and consumer satisfaction. On top of that, they have a diverse portfolio of products. I mean, you name it, they have it. They have SUVs, they have trucks, they have cars, they have buses, they have tractor trailers, they have financial services. They have a just very diverse portfolio of products, and this gives them a unique selling point, or a USP, over their rival firms. Their weaknesses. So they had a recent recall in July of 2019, and they had to recall 1.2 million SUVs that were putting drivers at risk. And that number one thing that happens is that ruins their reputation. You know, consumers realize, oh, they have a lot of recalls, so let's not buy them. That's a major weakness. Their opportunities. So their opportunities include strategic partnerships, along with the autonomous car growth in that industry. But I really want to talk about their partnerships, because they partnered with Argo AI, and Argo AI is a company that tests and introduces autonomous vehicles and their technology to put into those different types of cars. They also partnered with Postmates, the delivery system, the delivery company, to develop self-driving delivery systems and services. Their threats include the intense amount of competition. I mean, you name it, there's competition there. They have Chevy, General Motors, they have Tesla, they have Audi, they have Chrysler, they have all these other car companies. They have immense competition. They're in the same industry that they are. On top of that, they have government regulation now, especially with the environment and how that's working out. The government regulates that. The government regulates manufacturing, how much they can spend, where they can spend it. Just in the Trump administration already wanted to bring jobs back to America, and Ford had to shut down one of their manufacturing plants in and bring it over here. On top of that, they have they had two large acquisitions that really benefited them and could even benefit them more in the future. Their first acquisition was SAIPS. They were an Israeli subsidiary that creates machinery that learns algorithms with computer vision technology focused on input signals to self-driving cars. So it's really focused on the input side. They also partnered with Quantum Signal, which is also known as QS. This is used for military robotic systems, and this created simulation environments in order to explore autonomous systems. On top of that, it was with Ford's acquisitions, they transitioned their business from the standard business measures to a mobility-centered organization. They're focused on mobility and focused on autonomy and self-driving cars rather than just the standard car. They had a lot of cultural changes in their company as well. They had multiple different CEOs since 2006. I think they had 3 to be exact. Jim Hackett took over in 2017, and he was mainly completely changed their whole entire culture. I mean, instead of just being this laid-back company, he's pushing and challenging everyone to be aggressive and to be unorthodox. And he thinks that's what Ford is lacking. So, all in all, in my conclusion, the number one thing I have to say is Ford is making the push to become more than just a standard car company. So let's look at the next slide. So the next slide is strategy selection. How are we going to come up with our recommendations? In the world of business, you have to learn how to adapt right there on the fly. You have to learn to adapt to the different products, different markets, product innovation, consumer demand, anything of that nature. You have to just adapt as a business. And if you don't, you're going to fail. And in order to do this, there's one process. There's a process of strategic management. You have to come up with strategies. You have to figure out what strategy we're going to use to penetrate a new market or a new product in order to benefit us in the future and to bring in more revenue. So for that being said, we're going to look at the 2 strategies that I selected were the differentiation strategy and the focus strategy. Differentiation strategy, this is unique. It's what drives you to be unique from the competition. Why is Ford better than General Motors? You have to figure out why. They have to be unique. Focus strategy. So actually, go back to differentiation strategy. Some examples of this would be low pricing or buying in bulk or quality, performance. Companies such as Walmart, they use this. They do low pricing. Costco, they buy in bulk and they sell in bulk. Audi, Audi's all about their quality. They have quality cars and performance. Companies like Lamborghini's all about their performance. They want their car to be the best one, the fastest one. That's differentiation strategy. So now let's focus on focus strategy. So this is using resources to get into a narrow market or industry segment. This is a very niche market. So these examples would be something like electric cars, organic foods, or grocery stores, or dollar stores, sorry. And companies like this that use focus strategies, like Tesla, they're strictly electric cars. Whole Foods, they're strictly organic, better for you foods. Then you got Dollar General. They're only focused on $1. They're focused on a very niche and small market. Now, what you can do is you can combine these two strategies. You can combine both strategies into one, and this is also known as combination strategy. This takes the best of both worlds. This takes the best of the differentiation, it takes the best of the focus, and combines it into one strategy. This basically means that you're going to combine uniqueness with a niche market in order to benefit profit in the future. So for Ford's case, they're already establishing a name brand into the world of autonomous and self-driving cars with their partnerships of Argo AI, Postmates, and their acquisitions of the SAIPS and QS companies. They're already getting into the autonomous and the self-driving vehicle industry. They're putting their name out there. So right now their current cars for Ford, they're all fuel combustion. They're all gas. They're all gas-powered cars. In today's world, they're changing to be more eco-friendly. They're changing to be more, better for the environment, less pollution. Governments are even regulating pollution output. You kind of want to start steering away from the fueled cars. On top of that, Ford's cars, this is actually a really strong case. Ford's cars are 80 to 85% recyclable and reusable after use. They can tear that car down and use it for another car. And that's really cost effective for one. And on top of that, it's recyclable. That's just eco-friendly as it is. There's not a lot of steel being used and dumped out in the trash somewhere. On top of that, they have an immense R&D team, right? As I said earlier, they have an immense R&D team. Why don't we put all of this together? And that actually brings us to this part, which is our recommendation. They're Ford tough, right? That's their reputation. They're Ford tough. On top of that, you got their eco-friendly. They're already eco-friendly. They're using recyclable and reusable cars. So why don't we push for this niche market right here, the electric car market? I'm going to use Tesla as an example. In 2017, Ford had car sales of 6.6 million worldwide at a 5% profit margin. Tesla had barely over 100,000 cars sold in 2017, but their profit margin was 25%. On top of that, if you just look into the global atmosphere of the electric car market, the electric car market in 2017 is valued at $118 billion. It is projected to be $567 billion by 2025, and it's already 2020. In 5 years, it's going to go up $40 billion or $400 billion. All these countries, they're demanding for electric cars. They want to save the world. They want to save the planet. They want to save the future. Wow. Ford needs to just push into that market. Get in there early. Get going. Get their name. Get established. And they'll still be number one. The growth numbers are there. The profit numbers are there. Ford's making their way with acquisitions and the partnerships. They're making their way into that. And they want to push just like their CEO is trying to do, correct? He wants to push. He wants to be aggressive. So based on our company analysis of this course, and the internal factors, the external factors, the cultural changes of the company, us as a team, we decided that it is best that we recommend Ford to use their R&D research and their development and push investment into manufacturing self-driving autonomous vehicles while using their recyclable and reusable equipment as the differentiator. My bad. So that's what makes them different, is their 80 to 85% recyclable car. That makes them different right then and there. The niche market that we're going into is the electric market. That is how you do the combination strategy for Ford. So that being said, let's switch on over.